Hello, dear friends. Jason, your favorite storyteller, is here again to bring you another story that will make you go sorry what? Ready? Well then, get cozy and let's dive right in. Growing up in my family home, my brother, Gordon, and I often fought over the stupidest things. You might say that we were very competitive. Since he is 2 years older than me, I seldom win, but that never dampens my spirit. When we entered high school, our competitiveness never waned. He was captain of the football team, I was the leading scorer on the basketball team. He could bench press more than me, I could pin him in a wrestling match. The one area that we strangely didn't compete in was our dating life. Of course, for the most part, we dated within our grade level. That may also have been due to the senior girls he dated having no interest in lowly sophomores like me. Call me odd, but I was never interested in his cast-offs anyway. The thought of making out with a girl that he had French kissed was unappealing to me even though he was my brother, perhaps especially because he was my brother. Call me weird, but that's the way I'm wired. During my senior year of high school, Gordon was in his second year of college pursuing a business administration degree. I met Desiree in biology when we were assigned to be partners in a lab project. She happily delegated the dissection duties of the bullfrog to me, while she brilliantly made us both look good with organ identification. She caught her boyfriend cheating with one of her friends, and was still nursing her emotional wounds. By the end of the school year, she and I, Alex Whitcomb, became an item as we happily dated as exclusive partners. She was my prom date, which garnered us a lot of votes toward prom king and queen, but not quite enough to win it. I give her the credit for most of our votes because Desiree was a looker and I was just an average Joe. We were madly in love and everyone knew that we would marry one day. After graduation, we were both 18 and had the world by the tail. Our parents held a combined graduation celebration for us both. It was there that I proposed to her, and her gleeful acceptance made my heart soar. We became intimate soon after that. We were not surprised that our entwining compatibility extended itself in the bedroom as in all other ways between us. We could not have been a happier couple. Desiree's older sister had become a radiologist technician at the local hospital after graduating from the local technical community college. Desiree, anxious to follow in her footsteps, had already signed up to enter the 2-year program at the upcoming fall session. Not willing to be apart, I signed up for a 4-year HVAC program at the same technical community college that Desiree would be attending. My dad worked in commercial HVAC and loved his job, which inspired me to become trained in the same field. Since I would be expected to contribute what I could toward my education, I took on a summer job working as a helper at the same company as my dad. Desiree's parents have already paid for her first year's scholastic expenses, so she decided to take it easy and enjoy her last carefree summer, before jumping feet first into life. Each weekday evening, she would already be at my house waiting for me to come home from work. I'd grab a quick shower, and we'd either watch a movie at the house or go out on a date. It was during the third week of the summer on a Wednesday morning at work that we were dispatched to a call on a 65-ton air conditioning unit serving one section of the department store. The hermetic reciprocating compressor windings were suspect, but Dad wasn't ready to pronounce the compressor in need of a rewind job without confirmation from his megometer. He just replaced the batteries in the meter, but had inadvertently left it at home. As the helper, I was sent to her house to pick it up for him to use, which I was happy to have the break from the summertime rooftop heat. When I entered the house, I quickly located the meter and was about to exit when I heard some giggling coming from upstairs. My brother, Gordon, was home for the summer on break from college. Hoping to embarrass him by catching him with his girlfriend, I quietly sneaked upstairs and listened outside of his door. I wish I hadn't. I instantly recognized the female's voice as that of my fiancée, Desiree. The sounds of intimacy were unmistakable. I had no idea that a man could experience heartbreak and rage simultaneously. I lived it in that moment. I tiptoed into the room and was grief-stricken at the sight before me. Unaware of my presence, they were locked in the throes of carnal bliss. Her arms and legs enveloped his body as he plowed her furrow. This was a consensual act. She was not being forced. With them yet unaware of my presence, I grabbed her left wrist and jerked the engagement ring from her ring finger. Startled, she screamed at the unexpected intrusion, and recognition of disgust registered on my face. Gordon looked shocked at my sudden appearance and awareness of their degeneracy. Without a word, I stuffed the ring in my pocket and made a quick exit from the house. I heard them both scream after me, but I paid them no attention. Neither of them was about to run outside after me in their birthday suits. I quickly returned to the job site and handed Dad the meter. He saw the red in my eyes and could tell that something was wrong. "What's going on, son? You look pained." I motioned him away from the other technicians. When I went to the house to retrieve the meter, I caught Desiree and Gordon having sex in his room. I saw them with my own eyes. She wasn't being forced, and it sure didn't seem like it was their first time together. They were way too familiar. "Damn. That's terrible, Alex. We raised your brother to be better than that. And it shocks me that Desiree would betray you like that. Why don't you and I go home right now and have this out with them? That would be a bad idea, Dad. Right now I want to end them both with my bare hands. I can't be around either of them for a while. I need some time to cool down. That's probably a good idea. You go ahead and take the rest of the day off. I'll tell the supervisor you're feeling sick. Don't worry about it, son. Since I ignored multiple calls to my cell phone from first Desiree and then Gordon, I began receiving repeated texts from them imploring me to call either of them to talk. That wasn't going to happen. At that moment, I hated them both more than I thought imaginable. I couldn't go back home with either of them there. I called my best friend, Brent. He was at home playing a game online and told me I could crash with him for as long as I needed to. He couldn't believe that Desiree could do that to me and tried to lift my spirits by playing games. I tried to replan my entire life as my original plans had just been upended. I hardly slept a wink that night as my brain worked overtime trying to make sense of the double betrayal. The next morning, after showering, I put on the only clothes I had with me, partook of an IHOP breakfast, and returned to work on time. Alex, I'm glad to see you show up for work today. We've all been very concerned about you, my dad offered. If it's all the same to you, I don't want to talk about it, Dad. Can I just do my job and get through the day? Of course, son, I respect that, but sooner or later you're going to have to face life. You can't just run away from it, he advised. He was right. I knew he was right, but I was still so angry that if I saw Gordon right now I'd choke him to the afterlife. I took on every hard challenge of the day doing all of the grunt work without being asked. I needed to exorcise some demons and exhaustion helped. We had to wrestle that compressor from its housing and drag it to the side of the roof, where a crane could pick it up and set it down on the back of the work truck. It was a stroke of luck for me. The compressor would have to be rewound, and the customer was willing to pay overtime to turn it around ASAP. As the low man on the totem pole, that meant that I would make the 6-hour drive to the closest rebuild shop, where I would be waiting at their loading dock the next morning to unload it. That meant that I would be spending the night out of town away from home. That suited me just fine. At least I would be reimbursed for meals at the hotel room. I kept my phone charged but turned off. I had no desire to speak to anyone about my failed love life. My mood left a lot to be desired. Fortunately for the customer, the rebuild center happened to have a rebuild compressor in their shop ready to go. We simply traded in the damaged compressor for the rebuilt one. I wrote them a purchase order to cover the exchange fee, and I was on my way by 9 a.m. the next morning. I called ahead providing my ADA so they could schedule the crane service. Mid-afternoon, my truck was relieved of the weight of the compressor as it rose to the sky. I helped wrestle the rebuilt unit back into its housing as the mechanics installed new gaskets and attached the service valve connections. After a quick leak test, the vacuum pump was turned loose on the system to evacuate all non-condensable vapors overnight. We made it home by 10 p.m. After my shower, I locked my bedroom door and watched TV in my room until I fell asleep. Gordon knocked on my door and called out, but I ignored him. I heard Dad warn him away. The physical and emotional exhaustion led me to sleep in until 9 a.m. Saturday. The house was eerily quiet for a Saturday. After dressing, I cracked my bedroom door and heard some murmuring downstairs. I'm certain that they heard me go to the restroom and flush. I went downstairs and was shocked to see the living room full of people. In addition to my family, Desiree was there with her parents, the pastor of our church, and 3 of my best friends. I knew that the shit show was about to begin. Desiree had the good sense to avert her eyes and remain seated. Dad began, Alex, I'm not happy about confronting you like this, but everyone else thought it best to get everything out in the open, so this problem can be dealt with and put behind us. That's right, honey, Mom chimed in. We're all aware of the unfortunate scene you walked in on, and your brother and Desiree are here to apologize. Gordon began, I'm sorry, Alex, that you caught us together. We just happened to come together is all. Nature took its course. You know how it is that one thing can lead to another. In a moment of weakness, I came on to Desiree. It's not her fault. I take all the blame. Hate me all you want, but Desiree is a good girl, and you need to forgive her and move past this. If any 2 people ever belong together, it is you 2. My silence unnerved the group. My look was burning a hole in Desiree until she finally spoke. It meant nothing, Alex, I swear. I don't know what came over me to allow me to do that with him. It was the first time, in case you're wondering, and it will never happen again. I'd rather die than ever see that look on your face again. I'm apologizing to you before God and all these witnesses. Please forgive me and let me have my ring back. Saying yes to you was the proudest day of my life, and saying I do while standing next to you will make me the happiest girl alive. Her parents, who had always been kind to me, nervously smiled in support of their daughter, but wisely said nothing in defense of their daughter's recent behavior. You're swearing that it meant nothing? That's right. What I did with your brother meant nothing to me. That's a shame. You're admitting that you threw your future husband away for something that meant nothing. Is that supposed to make me feel better? She suddenly grew quiet again. Pastor Jenkins felt that it was his turn to speak in an attempt to crack through my wall. I'm not going to shove a mandate down your throat to forgive her right this minute, Alex. You're familiar with the teachings of the Bible, but if you'll indulge me, I'd like to remind you in this time of turmoil and strife in your life of a quotation often repeated from an 18th century poet, Alexander Pope, to err is human, to forgive, divine. We're all human, Alex, even you. The good book reminds us that none of us are righteous, no, not one. Everyone here loves you and hurts for your heart right now. We all know that it's going to take some time, but hopefully, you'll come to accept the two sincere apologies given to you this morning, and grow from this experience, and not let it destroy you. Easier said than done, Pastor. Desiree was crying now because I hadn't invited her into my arms nor spoken words of forgiveness after the appeals on her behalf. Brent, my best friend, grinned at me. Hey, bro. We know it's tough. But you're even tougher. You're too strong to let this bring you down. Desiree is cool, we all know that. Hey, after all, everybody makes mistakes, right? How about we go shoot a game of pool so you can clear your head? The three of us may even let you win for a change, he humorously lobbed. My other two friends chuckled along with him. Everyone stood there expectantly waiting for me to say something. I wasn't ready to say what they all wanted to hear. I appreciate what you're all trying to do, but I'm just not ready to deal with all of this yet. I need a lot more time and space to come to terms with everything, but I can't promise anyone what that outcome will be. I would embarrass myself horribly if I said what was on my mind right now, and that's what I'm trying to avoid. Desiree, I'd like you to leave the house key here that I gave you so you could drop by any time. I need you to stay away from me for a while until I can sort my feelings. But how can we get past this, if I'm not around to help you, Alex? I love you and only you, and I want to be with you forever. I squeezed my eyes shut and deeply sighed as her words cut into my heart like a sword. I looked directly over at her parents. She doesn't seem to hear me. Will you two keep her away from me for a while? I mean all contact. I need this or I might explode. They both silently nodded. Sorry, fellas, I said to my three friends. I don't have time to play pool right now. I've got too much on my mind. I'm going for a walk. Gordon, if you know what's good for you, never speak to me again, ever. If you do, I promise you that we'll both end up in the hospital. At that, I left and went for a walk around the neighborhood to clear my mind of the hatred that I now feel for Gordon and Desiree. I thought I had conducted myself rather well in the unscheduled conference that had just taken place, given the rage that was consuming my soul. Dad must have had a heart-to-heart talk with Gordon because he made himself scarce any time I was around. I tried to limit my time spent in the house to prevent interacting with him, and even when I was there, I stayed to myself alone in my room. That didn't stop Mom and Dad from coming to me nearly every day at separate times to chat about my feelings toward Desiree and Gordon. I tried to be polite to them, but in reality, I zoned out and thought of other things, rather than listen to them dictating what I should think, feel, say, and do. My friends were also in Desiree's court as they would barrage me with advice to forgive and forget. It got to the point that I began hanging out with them less and less. I continued working with Dad, who respected my wishes at work, and left the topic alone, which I appreciated. Then a nuclear bomb was dropped. Once more, on a Saturday morning, 3 weeks later, I was blindsided again by the very same people, except our pastor did not make this meeting for some reason. Desiree was wearing a pretty sundress and was beaming at me. Alex, I have some wonderful news. She excitedly announced as she handed me her peace stick. You're going to be a father. I'm pregnant. She gushed. With a stricken face, I looked over at her parents. We took her to the doctor for a blood test for confirmation. It's true, Desiree is pregnant, her mother warmly recounted. They didn't seem any happier than I was at the time. I look at Desiree. When can you get the test done? What test, Alex? What are you talking about? I've already confirmed it 2 ways, silly. I'm definitely pregnant. I'm talking about a prenatal paternity test, a special DNA test to determine who the father of your baby is. An irate Desiree suddenly lost her sweet tone and angrily shouted, I'm getting sick and tired of your crap, Alex. Yes, I made a mistake, one time. That doesn't mean the baby isn't yours. That's a low blow if you ask me, and I resent that you're trying to paint me as a slut who sleeps around with just anyone. Get over it, sweetheart. This is a good thing for us. We can still get married and bring the product of our love into our loving home. This is what we've always talked about, you and me, and love, and raising a family together. We're meant to be together, don't you see that? Her impassioned plea fell on deaf ears. You say it was the first time. Forgive my rudeness, but I don't believe you. What I saw you doing with him was vastly different than our first time together. But even if that were true, then that only tells me that any silver-tongued devil can seduce you into his bed. So, I ask again, when can you get the test done? Her mother jumped into the conversation. I don't like the way you're talking to my daughter, young man. I don't know why, but Desiree still loves you more than life itself. I halfway expected you to come up with something like this, so I did some checking around. The only kind of prenatal DNA test that I would allow her to take would be a non-invasive prenatal paternity test, which is much more expensive than amniocentesis, which I forbid. The non-invasive test costs around $1,350 to $1,750, depending on how quickly you want the results. Our health insurance company won't cover that cost. We discussed it and feel that money would be better spent for her and the baby's care, rather than wasting it on proving that it's yours. All you need to do is wait until after the baby is born, and a much simpler, less expensive test can be performed, if you really want to have it done after seeing and holding your child. The test won't cost you a penny. I'll pay for it out of my own pocket. I'll write you a check right now, or bring you the cash after I can get to the bank. You all seem to believe that it's mine, but I need to know for sure for my sanity. This whole situation is driving me crazy. Dad spoke up on my behalf. I can vouch for my son. If he says he will pay for it, then he will. In any event, I'll stand behind him. There will be no cost to you. Desiree and her family appear to be very disappointed by my insistence on the test. We'll let you know when the test will be administered, Alex. They'll need a cheek swab from you to determine the results. I thought it odd that no one suggested that Gordon be tested at the same time. To them, this was a slam dunk. I nodded. I'll be there at any time. Just let me know the day before so I can arrange time off if needed. I still need time, Desiree. I understand you're excited. Perhaps I can be too after the results are in. So, the sooner, the better. She perked up upon hearing something positive from me. I promise, I'll get tested as soon as possible, sweetheart. I agree with you wholeheartedly. The sooner the better so we can get back to where we belong. Monday evening, I received a text from Desiree, stating that the test would be administered Tuesday morning at 10:30 with the location. I met them there and went through the motions. I charged the total costs for the lab tests to my debit card as promised. We were told to expect definitive results within 7 days. Gordon must have felt relieved that the focus had been drawn away from him and sharply onto me. He decided that it was safe to approach me. Thanks, bro, for making me an uncle. I don't care if it's a boy or a girl, I plan to spoil it rotten, he jibed. Again, I ignored his remark and simply walked away. If he thought for one moment that I was past his betrayal, he was sorely mistaken. A week later, the results were overnighted to me in a FedEx envelope. Gordon and my parents gathered around me to learn the certified truth. Well, what does it say? My mom asked impatiently. In a nutshell, Mom, after reading it twice, it says, Alex Whitcomb, you are not the father. Want to speculate who is? No more tests are needed. I guess that answers the question about whether or not he wore a condom. Gordon, you are dead to me, and the next time you see my slut ex-fiancée, the mother of your custard child, you can tell her that she's dead to me as well. I don't ever want to see or speak to either one of you again for as long as I live. Do you understand me? For as long as I live. Alex. My dad demanded. I understand that you're rightfully upset. But as long as you live under my roof, that kind of talk will not be tolerated, is that clear? Crystal. Please excuse me, I have an appointment. It told me that my brother could seduce and breed my fiancé, and that's okay with my parents, but if I call the backstabbers on it, that's intolerable to my parents. I had to get out of there. I went out, purchased some fast food, and went to a movie to pass the time. I turned my phone off to avoid unwanted communications. It was 10:30 that night when I returned home. Desiree's mother's car was there. I had a bad feeling about what awaited me inside. Where have you been? My mother inquired. I went out to eat and then to a movie. Why? We've been waiting on you for hours. Sit down, Alex, we need to talk. There was an empty place next to Desiree. I ignored the setup and moved to a single chair across the room. Perturbed, she continued, Alex, after the way you left earlier, I figured that you hadn't contacted Desiree about the DNA results, so I called her and passed that information on. She and her parents have come to see you about the next step in your relationship with Desiree, now that a baby is on the way. I looked at Desiree incredulously. Do you really believe that I am going to marry you and raise another man's baby after you cheated on me? I love you, Alex, only you. Technically speaking, since we're not officially married yet, I haven't really cheated on you. What happened between me and your brother took place before we tied the knot. And as for our baby, it has your family genes, so it will surely look like you. My furrowed brow revealed my astonishment. Mom then said, honey, we realize that this is not an ideal situation. But technically, she's right and her baby is our family baby. Gordon has already completed 2 years toward his 4-year degree. Wouldn't it be a shame if he had to drop out to take care of this child? He's halfway finished with his degree already. And don't you dare try to say that you don't love her. The kind of love you two share can't be turned off so quickly. Don't you see why it makes perfect sense that you should put this unfortunate circumstance behind you and marry her? Unfortunate circumstance? What about my education, Mom? I plan to start school myself this fall. Doesn't that count for anything? Sure, that's a consideration, sweetheart. But your goal isn't for a 4-year degree. Your dad says you could enter an apprenticeship program where he works instead and work your way up over time. Yes, it will take longer to get there by starting as an apprentice, as opposed to having a 2-year degree from the community college, but it would be much easier for you to bear the burden of a family under those circumstances than it would be for Gordon. Think about it, Alex. It would be better for everyone all the way around. Doesn't that make sense? I could hardly believe my ears. Are you asking me to marry a known cheater for my wife, and then raise another man's baby as my own, simply to make life easier for my brother? Are you implying that his life is more important than mine? Of course not, Dad injected. Both of you are equally important in our eyes, and we love you both the same. Everyone here, including your brother, believes that you and Desiree belong together. Once your baby arrives, he'll be the best uncle imaginable, and he will chip in financially what he can to help out with the baby's expenses. Love and hate are opposite sides of the same coin. Whether you call what you're feeling right now love or hate, it remains a powerful emotion that you feel toward her. No one here is going to force you into anything, especially me. I love you, Alex, and I, as a parent, want what is best for both of my sons, not just one. All eyes were on me, and I don't think they liked the look on my face. After everything I've learned about Desiree, her actions have a consequence. I have fallen out of love with her. She and my brother have both betrayed me in the worst way possible. I am no longer interested in marrying Desiree, nor will I raise another man's child with her. It will never happen. Everyone saw the intransigence in my eyes and knew that I meant what I said. Desiree was crying now at my outright rejection. That added further wisdom to the mix. Alex, if you refuse, then that leaves him with no other choice. Gordon, you must step up to the plate and marry her. She'll have you so you can raise and support your child. I don't see how you can go to college full-time and do that. I'm sorry, son. Without Alex's cooperation, I don't see any other way. I could tell that Gordon was royally pissed at this development. His look of hatred at me was palpable. Gordon, I know that your life won't ever be the same, but we Whitcombs never shirk our responsibilities. Your mother and I raised you better than that. When Alex leaves for school in the fall, the helper job he's been working will become available to you. You can work alongside me and work your way up the ladder. That won't provide the kind of income you would have had as a degreed graduate, but you can squeak by if you continue living here with your new wife in your room for a while. It might be cramped there with the baby, but we'll work something out. So you're going to let them live here in the same house that I live in while I attend college. When I come home from school, I'll see the backstabbers every day as a reminder of what they did to me. I don't know if I could constantly handle that. I don't see that you have any say in the matter, Alex. Your mother and I own this house and we love you and Gordon equally. We won't turn our backs on him even after everything that's happened. Dismayed, I stated, I'm tired. Good night, I said. I didn't want to be around the backstabbers for another minute. Early the next morning, I called in sick. I left the house as a man on a mission. I visited 3 local storage facilities and secured the best deal. The monthly fee would be automatically drafted from my checking account. Then I visited the local recruitment center and told them all that I would sign with the first one that could get me out of this town the soonest. The Navy stepped up and began the process immediately. They sent me to an entrance processing station where I took the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, ASVAB, test, and passed up MEPS medical exam. I signed on the dotted line and was told I would be shipped to boot camp in 2 days. When it was all said and done, I breathed a huge sigh of relief. I couldn't bear to live with 2 traitors, especially ones who would be related to me and live in the same house. I rented a small U-Haul trailer and drove back to the house. It was a house I'd never call home again, and that was my imperative. Mom and Dad were at work. Dad had called and texted me asking why I called off work. I never responded. Of course, Gordon and Desiree were both there, once again having sex in his room. Apparently, they decided to make the best of their situation. I never wanted to see or talk to either of them again. I had half of my room emptied and onto the trailer, before he came out to see what was going on in my room. He asked me what I was doing, but I simply ignored him, as if he didn't exist. I continued removing all of my bedroom furniture, clothing, and everything else that belonged to me and loaded it all into the trailer. He yelled at me that he was calling Mom and Dad. Desiree joined in the fray and tried talking to me as well, and she also was met with total silence. Once the trailer was loaded, I headed over to the storage unit and carefully placed the collection that was my entire life neatly inside. My phone was now blowing up, but I elected not to respond. Instead, I checked into an inexpensive motel with a small suitcase that I would take with me when I shipped off to boot camp. I thought about stopping by the house that evening, but decided that my emotions were still too volatile. I would say my goodbyes tomorrow evening, then head off into the sunset on my new life adventure. I slept much better that night than I thought I would have. I believe that was because I was taking back control of my life and deciding my own fate, rather than letting others choose it for me. I spent the next day getting in touch with several of my other friends, and informed them of my situation. They'd heard rumors but nothing definitive. I informed them in direct terms what Desiree and Gordon had done. They all wished me well. That evening, Mom cried as she hugged me, saying that she was worried sick that something terrible had happened to me. Gordon and Desiree came into the room upon hearing the commotion. "Mom, tell both of them to leave the room now," I said angrily. "Dad, waiting, they'll do no such thing. Gordon lives here and she's visiting with her new fiancé, so she's welcome too. But from the looks of your room, you don't live here any longer. What's going on, Alex?" he demanded. "Fine. If they stay, I go. I hate them and they are both dead to me. You won't tell me what to do in my own house, son. Your brother lives here so they can stay." "You're absolutely right, Dad. So, I'll go. I was going to fill you both in on the details, but I refused to do so in the same room as dead people. Here are the keys to the family car I've been driving." I handed them to Mom. "I've joined the Navy. Perhaps I'll see you in 4 years." I rushed out of the house and quickly jogged out of view as Mom cried and called out after me. I didn't want to look back and let her see me crying also. I thought about calling an Uber, but decided that it was a nice evening out, and a walk would do me good. I turned my phone off and turned a new leaf in my life. I spent the next 10 weeks in boot camp at the Naval Station in Great Lakes, Illinois. I had not bothered to call Mom or Dad to let them know any of the details about my graduation. I marched into the ceremony with about 800 of my new shipmates to a sea of applause, and I was proud to be there. After the ceremony, parents, wives, girlfriends, and significant others viewing the ceremony from the bleachers in the drill hall rushed to greet the new sailors. I was shocked to see Mom and Dad there. They must have made some calls themselves. "What are you guys doing here?" I asked as Mom hugged and kissed me. Dad extended me a firm handshake in approval of the young man I was shaping up to be. Then I saw them. Gordon and Desiree stepped up to greet me. "What the hell are they doing here?" I spat. Mom, in a conciliatory tone, explained, "They're married now. Isn't that wonderful? And you're going to be the best uncle in the world to their baby when it arrives, aren't you?" My dour expression gave away my reaction. "Sorry, Mom. I didn't get a chance to go to the restroom before the graduation ceremonies began, and I'm about to burst. Let me see if I can find one real quick." I took off and headed to an area of the camp off limits to everyone except for the enlisted. Perhaps they'll all get the message now. They drove all this way only to share 2 sentences. Fortunately, my phone was back in my bunk. I hadn't anticipated receiving any calls. Most of the graduates received a few days off to visit family before being transferred to their next duty station. I had not requested any such time. I remained on the base for 3 days before shipping off to school. My vocational aptitude battery test showed me qualified for HVAC training, which is exactly what I wanted to do. We began with the basics, and over the months, my proficiency qualified me to be a mechanic, servicing the large variable speed centrifugal and screw chillers that cooled ships and submarines. I spent the remainder of my 4-year stint in the Navy aboard a carrier. I was amazed at the size. It was like a floating city. I decided not to re-enlist and left the service with a lot of training and experience. York, Train, and Carrier are the 3 main brands of centrifugal and screw chillers, with which I had experience servicing. Back in my hometown, York was a subsidiary of Johnson Controls. I applied and was hired as a service technician. I had to make some adaptations, but the science was the same whether on a ship or inside a building. I moved into an apartment and pulled everything out of storage. Seeing all of my things again made me a bit homesick, so I decided to touch base with my parents. I met them at a restaurant. "Oh, Alex. My, how you've grown. I can't get over how handsome my son is. Let me get a good look at you," Mom adulated. "I'm 22 now, Mom, so, yeah, I've filled out a little." "Hey, Dad, I'm a fully qualified service technician with Johnson Controls now, working primarily as factory service on centrifugal and screw chillers, which is a bit different than the reciprocating units you work on in your job. I doubt we'll cross paths very often, but we may run into each other in one of the supply houses now and then." "Wow, Johnson Controls, huh? Yeah, they work on the big machines. That's awesome. I'm proud of you, son. You know, that gives me an idea. Now that you work there, Gordon could apply there for an apprentice position, and I bet he'd get it with your recommendation. As you know, the pay scale is better over there than it is with our firm, and Gordon could use every extra dollar for him and Desiree and their family. I wish you'd get over your snit with your brother and Desiree. They're both so anxious to connect with you again and were barely disappointed that you asked that they stay behind, Dad informed. No thanks, Dad. That ship has already sailed. If he applies where I work, I'll do everything I can to blackball him. Let's change the subject, Dad. I don't ever want to hear anything about either of them. I can't say it strongly enough. They're both dead to me. I'll never knowingly be in the same room with them again. Alright. I won't press you, Alex. But you should know that they moved their family into their own home 6 months ago, so you can stop by our old place most any time, and not have to worry about running into them. Good to know. I'll always call first to make sure. Their look of disdain at my recalcitrance said it all. I caught them up on my life in the Navy and explained that I now had the educational background to service most HVAC products. Dad expressed his pride in my achievements. I shared some of the experiences I had in countries and ports I had visited around the globe. Why, son? Why did you just uproot and leave us as you did? You know why? You told me that as long as I lived under your roof, I'd have to put up with seeing them every day. So I fixed it so that I would no longer be living under your roof. He just shook his head. I met Joanne Lindley through a coworker, Kyle Laughlin, who, after cementing a solid friendship, asked me to be his best man at his wedding. She was the wedding planner director. That was her profession that she'd taken over from her mother. I couldn't hardly take my eyes off of her during the rehearsal. She and I kidded around and joked every spare minute she had. It seemed that the attraction was mutual. We ate together at the rehearsal dinner which kicked off our dating life. Dating her was challenging at times. She worked odd hours on some evenings where she met with her clients and potential clients. Spring and summer were her busiest times. She rarely had days free on weekends, and on wedding days, she stayed with her clients through the event until the DJ packed it up. Still, we made it work. A year later, I could think of no reason to keep my life on hold any longer. When Joanne was 23 and I was 24, I popped the question. Her mother came out of retirement to direct her own daughter's wedding. My parents loved her to death. Joanne was so amiable that she could fit right in anywhere she found herself. I was very proud of her. On our wedding day, I made certain that my parents knew better than to try to sneak my brother and his wife into our wedding or reception. Though Joanne had seen pictures shown to her by my parents, she'd never met them. Despite my request, my family didn't cut them off, so I explained to Joanne how I would never again be in the same place as he is, and that if my parents wished to invite us both, then they should just invite my brother, as I am the one invoking an ultimatum. Joanne understands that I've always avoided any events that I knew Gordon would be attending. She quickly learned that the topic was a hot-button issue for me, and she evaded triggering me by not bringing them up in conversation. Joanne has 2 older brothers whom she adores and with whom I get along fine. 18 months later, little brunette Elise Renee Whitcomb came into the world a beloved child. I'd heard that my brother had 3 children, yet my parents acted as if this was their first grandbaby, and we appreciated it. Of course, Joanne's mother did everything in her power to spoil Elise as well. I wouldn't call her daddy's or mama's girl. As she grew up, she loved us both equally, and Joanne and I invested as much of ourselves into her as we could. We made frequent trips to both grandparents' homes where copious pictures were constantly taken. We were pleased to have solid relationships on both sides of the family. Joanne was treated like a daughter by my mom and dad. Sometime after celebrating our 8th wedding anniversary, Kyle Laughlin recommended Joanne to his cousin to direct their wedding. The day after he had attended the rehearsal, he caught up with me at lunchtime on a job I was working on. Hey, Alex, how's it hanging? Kyle began. Not too well, to be honest. Looks like I may have to recover about 700 pounds of refrigerant from this chiller to repair all of the low side leaks I just found. That's going to be a pain in the butt. I feel your pain, man. I've got to replace a motor bearing on a 900 HP open drive motor, but that'll be a breeze compared to what you're facing, but that's not what I came to see you about, he noted. Yeah, what's up? What I have to tell you isn't going to be easy, man, but I'd want to know if it was me, so I hope you don't shoot the messenger. What are you talking about, Kyle? Alex, you know I think Joanne's the greatest. That's why I recommended her to my cousin, Ashley, for her wedding. Yeah, she mentioned that she was working on that one recently. We appreciate your support and thank you for the recommendation. I'm afraid that you're not going to be so thankful when I show you something I think you should know. Oh? What's up, Kyle? Well, I was at my cousin's wedding rehearsal yesterday and the dinner afterward. Joanne announced to everyone that she'd hired an assistant, Steve Baker, and introduced him to everyone, saying that he'd be shadowing her to learn the ropes. No big deal, right? No big deal, except that she never informed me that she'd hired an assistant, nor has she ever mentioned anyone by that name to me either. I'm sorry, Alex, but there's more. I don't think she recognized me since it's been a while since I'd been around her because she never reacted to my presence. Anyway, after the rehearsal was over and people were gathering for the rehearsal dinner, the caterer asked me if I knew where the power panel was located because the outlets weren't working, and they had a couple of heat lamps that they used on specialty foods. I looked around for Joanne or Steve and didn't see either of them. When I asked, someone told me that they saw them go into the back room to check on something. I walked across the building into the back room, which was unlocked. As I entered, it was pitch black, but I could see a tiny glint of light around the corner. When I walked up near them, I was shocked to see Joanne on her knees giving Steve a blowjob. He was using the light from his phone to illuminate their activity. Whether or not he was recording the blowjob, I can't say. Shocked, I took my phone and recorded about 90 seconds of her going at him. My phone has great low light capability. I'm sorry, man, I thought you would want to know. I hope you'd return the favor if the circumstances were reversed. Damn. Shit. Hell. Are you sure it was her, Kyle? Was it her for certain? Sorry, man. It was her, I'm sure of it. I didn't record the video for me, Alex. I did it for you. I'll transfer the video clip to your phone, then I'll delete it from mine. From the looks of it, I don't believe that what I witnessed was their first time together. I hate that you had to see that, Kyle, but I appreciate that you came to me with this, rather than let it go on unchecked. Thanks, man, for your discretion. Later that evening, Joanne called me at 10 p.m. after arriving home. Where are you and Eli's? It's late, she should already be in bed. She's spending the night at your mother's. I'm at a hotel. Wait, what? What's going on, Alex? Why are you at a hotel? You're not making any sense. I'll answer your question with a question. Who is Steve Baker? Who? Steve who? I'm not sure what you're talking about. Are you telling me that you haven't hired a man named Steve Baker as your assistant? Oh, you mean at work? That's Steve Baker. No, silly, he's not my assistant. He's just one of the florists I recommend to clients, and we do a lot of weddings together. I see. And does his florist work also involve you sucking his clock? What? How dare you? You're talking crazy, Alex. Where is all this coming from? I'm sending you a short video clip, Joanne. Let me know when you've watched it. 2 minutes later. How? Where? Oh, God. Where did you get this? It doesn't matter, Joanne. I'm divorcing you. After what Desiree did to me, you know exactly how I feel about infidelity. I'll be fair, we'll split everything right down the middle. If you fight me on this, on any issue, especially custody of Eli's, which we'll share 50-50, then I'll send copies of that video to all of your prospective customers and all of our family and friends. Goodbye, Joanne, and I ended the call. She knew better than to test my resolve. 8 years of marriage down the drain. We sold the house and split the proceeds. She didn't argue with me about anything. It was an amicable divorce. I never asked her any more questions about her affair or if she'd had others. It wouldn't have helped. We did a great job co-parenting Eli's. As far as I knew, she didn't berate me behind my back. From the age of 6.5, Eli's was given the best by both of us. I never badmouthed her mother to her, but I did share a few salient details with friends and family. I was unable to simply shut Joanne out of my life as I had my brother and my ex-fiancée. She and I would see each other when making the weekly exchanges with Eli's, and also at Eli's birthdays and holidays. Joanne tried to win me back several times, but each attempt was firmly rebuffed. She remained close to my parents because their status as grandparents never changed. I didn't have a problem with that. Eli's underwent therapy once per week for 2 years at my insistence. I didn't want her to live through our divorce without someone qualified to provide her with the tools to deal with her emotions. She did well in grade school and graduated high school with honors. For her graduation present, I purchased a nice, safe, slightly used car for her to drive. Joanne and I had always split all costs associated with raising her, but the car was all me and I wanted it that way. During the summer before she started college, I sat Eli's down and told her that she was now old enough to learn specifically why I had divorced her mother. Of course, I spared her the graphic details, but explained that her mother had been caught having an intimate affair with another man, and I couldn't live with her after that. Eli's explained that her mother had painted a whitewashed version of the demise of our marriage, saying that we simply wanted different things. She accepted my version as the truth. While I was at it, I explained that, owing to very similar circumstances, that's why I had cut my brother's family out of my life. He and his wife had both intolerably betrayed my trust to an extent that I could never get past. She took it all in stride, accepting and understanding the reasoning behind my decisions. When Elias started college, Kyle introduced me to his sister-in-law, Tasha McMasters, who had been widowed 2 years earlier, losing her husband to cancer. Her daughter, Amber, was the same age as Elias and was also entering college. Tasha and I gravitated to one another and connected on an enigmatic level. Having been burned badly twice, I wasn't interested in pursuing matrimonial connections, nor was she ready to change her name yet. She still missed her soulmate. We gratifyingly met the needs of each other, and were living a very fulfilling life together. She moved in with me a year later, and we managed a blended family situation to the best of our abilities. Elias and Amber graduated college the same year while receiving their 4-year degree but from different universities. Elias had met her dreamboat during her junior year of college. Barry Dotson was a nice enough guy who convinced me that he truly loved Elias, and had a good head on his shoulders. We disagreed on a few political issues, but nobody's perfect. Elias was thrilled to accept his proposal, and they were to be married within 9 months. Joanne and I met with them to discuss budgets and expectations. Once a number was decided upon, Joanne and I agreed to split the expense right down the middle. It was at her upper limit and she couldn't afford another nickel. I could easily have afforded their wedding budget alone, but she wanted to pay her half, likely to have control of the wedding. Since wedding details are generally a mother's domain, I left them to it. Elias asked for my list of potential wedding invitation recipients. She and her mother had already hammered out their names, and sought to add any others I wanted to the list, as long as it was within their budget. I told her I had to give this some thought and asked her to furnish me a copy of the list they had already developed, so I could see what friends of mine weren't already on it to save time. She dropped it off and I reviewed it 2 days later. I was shocked. Prominent on the list were the names of Gordon and Desiree Whitcomb and their 3 children, Donna, Clay, and Lisa. For the wedding party roles, they had included Clay as a groomsman, and Lisa would be their flower girl. I knew that Joanne and I both had made it perfectly clear to Elias how I felt about my brother and his family. This was no accidental mistake. I met with Elias and Barry to have a little powwow. Elias, you know how I feel about my brother and his family, and you know why. I've always been crystal clear about them. Now I see that you have invited them all to your wedding and plan to involve 2 of their kids in the wedding party. What's going on? Daddy, I love you with all my heart. Barry and I both do, but I naturally became curious about them, what kind of people they are, and why you despise them so. I wanted to see them for myself and make my own decisions. I know this may bother you some, Daddy, but I've been seeing them for the last 4 years, and have built a relationship with them without your knowledge. I never mentioned it before because I didn't want to upset you. Upset me? You went behind my back and built a relationship with them knowing how I feel about them. Yes, it is true that we all kept it secret from you, knowing you would object. They're really wonderful people. I felt compelled to invite and involve them in the wedding, thinking that this would be the perfect opportunity to get you back together with a big part of your family that's been missing from your life far too long. I'm an adult now and I can make my own decisions and invite whoever I want to my wedding. You're absolutely right, Princess. But as you said, you knew my feelings about them, and that's why you all conspired to keep me in the dark until close to the wedding. I'm surprised you didn't blindside me with it at the wedding. We talked about that and thought it over, but felt that blindsiding you would only induce you to make a scene and ruin my wedding, so I decided to tell you ahead of time, so you can learn to accept it. They promise not to cause any problems. They miss you and want to see you again. I want you to do this for me, Daddy. It's my wedding. Does your mother know about this? She knows how I feel about them. Why didn't she say something to you? Of course, she knows, Daddy. Mom, Grandma, and Grandpa are the ones who suggested that we all get together and reforge the family ties back where they should have been all along. You presume to judge me. Imagine if you had a sister and she stole Barry away from you shortly before you were to be married, and she turned up pregnant with his baby. How lovey-dovey would you be with your sister under those circumstances? Honey, you've always known what my boundaries were, and if my brother and his family are invited, then perhaps I should reconsider paying for my part of the wedding. Oh, really? She spat in anger. Daddy, it's time to let go of the past. It's all water under the bridge long ago. It's unreasonable for anyone to hold a grudge that long. It's not healthy for you. Just let it go once and for all. Greet them at my wedding and put your broken family back together. Elias, honey, you know I love you, but it's not your call to make. You can want that for me all you wish, but it will never make me want it. You've never broken your word to me, Daddy, not once in my entire life that I can recall. You promised me you'd pay half. Are you going to go back on your word simply because my flesh and blood aunt and uncle will be at my wedding? My word should mean something too, Daddy. I gave them my word that they would be invited to my wedding, and that Clay could be a groomsman, and Lisa would be our flower girl. She knew she had me there. I've always been a man of my word and she knows it. I exhaled a big sigh. You're right, sweetheart. Please forgive my oversight. My emotions got the better of me. Thank you for reminding me that I'm a man of my word. I will honor my word to you and pay my half of the wedding expenses, because my word is my bond. Also, I agree with you. You promised them, you gave your word, and just like me, you need to honor your word. Elias hugged my neck in joy, but I continued. Well, we're on the subject of honoring my word. I gave my word long ago never to be in the same room as them. I am not a liar, I keep my word. When you invited all of them, you unintentionally uninvited me. You knew my feelings about them, yet you went behind my back and embraced bringing them to your wedding. It is your right, honey, and I respect that. I can accept that you want to have a relationship with them all, and I will never ask you to ignore them as I do because they have not betrayed you. The only one they betrayed is your father. However, I will not be walking you down the aisle because I won't be there. Perhaps your amazing uncle can assume that honor. No. You can't do that. Don't you dare threaten me with that, Daddy. If you don't show up for my wedding and walk me down the aisle with them there, I'll never speak to you again. She flared heatedly. Elias, honey. You have no idea how deeply it hurts me to hear you say such a thing. My sheephead betraying ex-brother and his cheating backstabbing slut wife's betrayal is now complete. They have induced you to drive a wedge between us and keep me from your wedding. No, Daddy, that's not what I want. I want you at my wedding and I want you to be happy to be there with them. You want that, do you? Yes. I wanted a brother who wouldn't betray me and stab me in the back. I wanted a fiancé who wouldn't cheat on me and bring about the destruction of my family. I wanted parents who would honor and respect my wishes. I wanted a wife, your mother, who wouldn't cheat on me. I wanted all of those things, but I never got a single one of them. Honey, since you gave your word to all of them, it is best that you go back on your word and betray only one person, me, rather than going back on your word to everyone else in the family. It's the logical and prudent thing to do. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go and get drunk. The pain of missing your wedding is unbearable. I wanted to be left alone to deal with my misery. I didn't get what I wanted. My angry parents, my fuming ex-wife, Joanne, and even my outraged girlfriend, Tasha, and her daughter, Amber, all tried their best to convince me to change my mind and let bygones be bygones. Every one of them insisted that I reconsider and apologize to Elias and make up with my estranged brother. Tasha informed me that by not attending the wedding and walking Elias down the aisle, I would destroy the relationship with my daughter. I haven't spoken with Gordon or Desiree for more than 25 years. Why start now? I have to admit that there is now a rift with Elias, and every family member I know has become actively involved in criticizing me. I did some soul searching. My boundary of not wanting to see my brother was my choice, and my pain was all-consuming. I explained to everyone that my boundaries kept me emotionally safe. I had set an expectation that was followed up with consequences. However, everyone was in lockstep, saying that when my boundary demands that others have the same mentality about the situation, the boundary becomes unhealthy. They all asked me if it would be worth what I could lose just to maintain my precious boundary. Because she lived with me, Tasha had more access to me than the others. Alex, honey. Please listen to reason. Why won't you be reasonable and at least try to find a compromise, one that allows you to maintain your boundaries without damaging your relationships? If you would consider being at her wedding and walking her down the aisle, aren't there compromises you might ask of Elias? For example, not being seated anywhere close to them. Think about it, if you could separate your brother's betrayal and Elias's wedding plans, that would help you to focus on your emotions and energy in a healthier way. Is your history with your brother worth losing all of the people you are now shunning? But can't you see it from my side, Tasha? Elias has decided that she's willing to alienate me for someone who betrayed my trust. It doesn't matter if it was 25 years ago, it only matters that it happened. It's easy for everyone to say get over it when it wasn't done to them. Ask Elias if her fiancé cheated on her tomorrow, and then he moved on with his new slut, but I decided to remain close friends with him. Would she be okay with that? Tasha paused and considered my logic. Elias should not get to dictate when or if you let go of the past, but she is well within her rights to invite whomever she wants to her wedding, and build a relationship with her uncle if she chooses to. It's time to consider whether or not being in the same room as your brother is worth sacrificing your relationship with your daughter. Honey, if you can't compromise in some way, your decision will likely irrevocably damage your relationship with Elias, and I'd hate to see that happen. Could you survive that? I think my boundaries should be respected. There are levels of survival I am willing to accept. I finally grew weary of constantly defending myself to everyone. I told them off and now I'm ignoring their calls. I've basically separated myself from my ex-wife, Elias, my parents, and many other extended family members and well-meaning friends. The mood was cold and frosty in my home. We were at an impasse. Though I couldn't imagine it possible, I was resolute, angry, and sad all at the same time. I spent a lot of time thinking about what was at stake. It had boiled down to my pride versus a relationship with my daughter. I dearly love Elise with all my heart. Then I asked myself the question, who is truly being punished by my demands? I had to admit, I was teetering. Elise never informed me that Gordon and his family had been uninvited, so that means that she was doing exactly as I had advised her to do, keep her word to the others, and break her word to me. As Spock once famously quoted Charles Dickens, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. I was in despair. On a Sunday afternoon, 2 weeks before the wedding, my doorbell rang. Amber was out with her friends, so it couldn't be someone for her. Tasha yelled that she was busy and told me to see who was at the door. Then my stomach jumped, wondering if I was going to have to defend myself again against some well-meaning interloper. I finally managed the wherewithal to rise from my chair and see who it was. Elise. I incredulously muttered in shock at the sight before me. "Hi, Daddy, may we come in?" Elise was all decked out in her glorious wedding dress and full-blown regalia, and grinning from ear to ear. Standing next to her was Barry Dodson, her fiancé, wearing a very sharp tuxedo. Another unknown man in a plain dark suit holding a Bible was standing right behind the overdressed pair. "Of course, sweetheart. Come on in. You look absolutely stunning in that dress. You're so beautiful, it takes my breath away," I exclaimed. "Thank you, Daddy. I was hoping you'd be pleased. And you too, Barry. You're sharp as a tack." "Thank you, sir," he responded. "Welcome to our humble abode, sir. My name's Alex Whitcomb. And you are?" "Pastor Richard Walters. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance, sir. I'm here at this fine couple's request." "What's going on, baby? I mean, I'm not complaining in the least. You look gorgeous. Did you come by so I could see you in your glory before the wedding?" "No, Daddy, Barry and I are getting married." "I know that's silly, but why are you here now?" "You don't understand, Daddy. Barry and I are getting married right here, today, in your backyard. We brought the preacher with us, and the photographer will be here in 15 minutes. We had to time things where they could work us in." "What? But why?" "I mean, Barry convinced me, Daddy. He reminded me that I told him that you have always been an outstanding father and an honorable man ever since the day I was born. He asked me, of all the people that I know besides him, his feelings mattered the most to me. Without blinking, I told him it was you, hands down. Suddenly it hit me like a ton of bricks." She began to cry. "I'm sorry, Daddy. Next to Barry, you're the most important person in the world to me, and I have poorly treated you as if that wasn't true. But that's not all. Barry asked me who I wanted to walk me down the aisle. You already know the answer to that. But he followed up by asking me, what's preventing that from happening? And I told him that you wouldn't be there if my uncle was. Next, he said a word that shocked me to the core. Barry said, so. It was as if the scales were lifted from my eyes. Daddy, this is not a rehearsal or a practice run. Barry and I are really getting legally married today in your backyard. You're going to walk me down the aisle and make my lifelong dreams come true today, to hell with everybody else." Tears spilled from my eyes as my little girl reminded me just how much she loved me. I would never have asked this of them, but they're doing it anyway. I heartily shook Barry's hand. "Thank you, Barry. I now understand why Elise chose you above all others to share her life." Saying nothing, he just grinned and returned my firm grip. I had to ask another question. What about your mother? Won't she be royally pissed at you both for undermining the grand event by eloping like this, instead of going through with the original plan? Elise became somber. I was on the fence about including her today, but a recent conversation I had with her pushed me over the edge. We were talking about your inflexibility concerning your brother. Mom is the one who persuaded me to surreptitiously connect with your brother's family 4 years ago. When Mom and I were recently discussing the possibility of your absence from my wedding, she derided you by saying you were acting like a 2-year-old baby. Mom knows how strongly I feel about you walking me down the aisle, so I asked her a direct question point blank. Do you think I should honor Uncle Gordon's family invitation to the wedding, knowing full well that Daddy won't be there because of it? Her response floored me. She said, absolutely. For clarification, I rephrased the question, asking her, are you telling me to intentionally choose Uncle Gordon's family over my daddy? She shocked me again with her answer, your daddy is the most unforgiving asshole alive. Gordon is willing to forgive your dad for the way he's treated his family all these years, and is eager to reconnect with him to heal the severed relationship. But no, not your self-righteous asshole of a father. I'm sorry, Elise, but that's exactly what he is, an asshole. I admit that he found out about me with another man one time. I begged and pleaded for forgiveness, but what did he do? He divorced me. Sure, there were other men that he never knew about, but he divorced me for that one instance, and threatened my livelihood if I became uncooperative in the divorce. So, yes, Elias, I'm telling you as your mother to honor Gordon's family invitation to ensure that your asshole of a father isn't there. Either that or force him to grow a pair and man up by mending his stubborn alienation with Gordon. Elias continued, couples elope every day for various reasons. Sure, mom will be angry for a while. But she, as my parent, was insisting that I choose someone else over my other parent, you. That's when I realized that she was manipulating me to hurt you because you divorced her. She also expended a lot of effort to put me together with your brother's family, nurtured by grandma and grandpa. Because I listened too closely to mom, I nearly lost my dad. Had that happened, I never would have forgiven any of them, so it's a good thing that Barry helped me come to my senses when he did. Since mom insisted that I choose one parent over another, that's exactly what I'm doing here today. I wiped tears from my eyes and hugged her. I was bursting with pride at the profound maturity and wisdom exhibited by this wonderful couple. Something then occurred to me. Did you say photographers were coming? I hope you won't be too disappointed, honey, but I returned my tux a couple of weeks ago. I'd be honored to walk you down the aisle even in my underwear, but I'm afraid I won't look the part in the pictures. Ahem, Tasha cleared her throat, grinned and winked. In a moment of inspiration, I just happened by the rental place a couple of days ago, and they just happened to have that same tux available to rent. It's in the coat closet over there hiding between two of your winter coats. What a stroke of luck, she added impudently. So you knew and didn't say anything. I was amazed. I only keep secrets from you for the right reasons, she supplied, and this seemed to be a great reason. As I was changing into my tux, the photographer and videographer arrived and were getting the lay of the land for the impromptu wedding layout. They were already taking pictures of Barry and Elias to save time because they had another wedding to get to later that day. We winged the ceremony in the absence of a wedding director. Tasha played a compilation music CD that Elias had provided her, on our boombox. The whole event took less than 30 minutes. The preacher was very eloquent and proficient. I was never more proud in my life to take such a short walk with my daughter. The photographer and videographer took gobs of pictures and video, capturing every second of the activity. Elias had brought the top tier of their wedding cake to perform the cake-cutting ritual, and shared the rest of the cake with us. No one else was there, just Elias and Barry, Tasha and me, the preacher and the photographer and videographer, a total of 7 people against the 175 or so that had been formally invited. When it came time for the 2 witnesses to sign their wedding certificate, the newlyweds asked Tasha and me to do the honors. We were thrilled. Elias put on another CD so she and her new husband could have their first official dance together. Of course, the requisite father-daughter dance followed while Barry twirled Tasha around in the backyard. It was perfect. After the preacher, photographer, and videographer left us, Tasha invited the connubial couple inside our house, where she had prepared a virtual feast of everyone's favorite dishes. How she had concealed her behavior from me amazed me. Perhaps there was even more to this special woman than I realized. After the wonderful meal shared only by the 4 of us, I had to ask, what about the original wedding plans and your honeymoon? Barry spoke for the couple. It only cost us a 10% surcharge to move all of our airline, accommodation, and excursion honeymoon reservations up to start tonight instead of 2 weeks from now. After we change clothes here, if you'll take us to the airport, we'll be flying to the Maldives for our week-long honeymoon. We both have separate work-related cover stories already in place and pre-announced to all you need to know, which cunningly accounts for us being unavailable and out of town this week. In everyone's mind, the wedding will still take place in 2 weeks. Just a minute, Barry. I retrieved my wallet, produced a credit card, and handed it to him. Barry, I already believe you to be a great son-in-law. If you would like to be elevated to fantastic son-in-law, I'd like you to do me one small favor. What's that, sir? He quizzed. I insist that you use this credit card to cover the extra surcharge expense to this credit card. Secondly, I want you to charge no less than $2,500 to this card for anything the 2 of you would like to spend it on while you're there. I don't care how you spend it. That's up to you two. Remember, not a penny less. You can go over, but not under. Got it? I emphasized. Got it, he rejoined as they both hugged my neck in thanks for the unexpected gift. One more thing, I added. I could have easily afforded to cover all of your wedding expenses, but your mother insisted on paying half, probably so she could control everything. If she gives you any grief about being ripped off of her half of the wedding costs, I'll gladly write you a check allowing you to reimburse her for every penny. Thank you, Daddy. Barry and I may very well take you up on that generous offer. As for today, I have no regrets. This was my perfect wedding day. I must have hugged her for 5 minutes before releasing her to go change her clothes. 2 weeks later, Elias and Barry Dotson appeared just in time for their originally scheduled wedding ceremony dressed in casual clothes. No one was surprised by my absence. Hello everyone. To all of our friends and family, Barry and I want to thank each of you from the bottom of our hearts for joining us today to celebrate our nuptials. What you may not know is that Barry and I are already married. We eloped 2 weeks ago and held our own private ceremony. But that doesn't take anything away from our reason to share with you in the celebration of our happy union. So, if it's okay with everyone here, we'd like to go ahead and start the wedding reception. Let's get the party started, she shouted. Many whoops and hollers emanated from the crowd as the DJ took over the party. Of course, there were no formal photographers present. A dozen throwaway cameras were evenly placed around the reception hall for guests to use to help them make memories of the occasion. Eliza's mother, Joanne, was, in fact, fuming mad at her daughter for undermining her intended plans, but endeavored not to let it show in front of all of the other guests. Gordon, Desiree, and their 3 children Donna, Clay, and Lisa, were bitterly disappointed along with my parents, that they would have no formal role in the wedding party, other than celebrating their nuptials, and that there would be no long-awaited family reunion of the estranged brothers, as had been greatly anticipated. Amber, Tasha's daughter, shared some unrequested information with me one day that she'd heard from Eliza. Desiree must have learned her lesson after losing you. She toughened up her resolve never to stray again, and stayed with your brother all these years to raise her family, even though it was not the family she had originally intended to raise. The irony of that situation wasn't lost on me. Although I thought I would never do it, in a weak moment, I dropped to one knee while we were vacationing at the beach with the sun hanging low on the picturesque horizon. The setting was idyllic. Tasha McMasters, would you do me the honor of changing your last name to Whitcomb? To be perfectly honest, I was unsure if she was ready to make the change or not, but she had become such a blessing in my life, I felt compelled to put my heart out there one more time. She said, yes. That's it for today's story, my friends. Don't forget to like and subscribe before you leave, and I'll see you in the next video.